The Finance Minister and Leader of the Government in the Senate, Mathias Cormann. Thanks for your time, Finance Minister. Let's start with this leak to the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. What do you make of the information that's emerged in relation to NAB and its discussions with EY in relation to risk management and therefore the reports that were subsequently provided to the regulator as a result?
Well, I mean, that's obviously a matter for NAB to explain throughout the day today. I mean, from our point of view, I mean, the Royal Commission has taken place. It made 76 recommendations on how the regulatory system and related matters should be improved and addressed and dealt with. The government is taking action on all of those 76 recommendations. It's obviously incumbent on the banking sectors and the financial sector in general to do its bit to restore confidence, to restore public confidence. And I mean, I suspect that a proper explanation today by NAB will be an important part of restoring confidence.
Do you think there needs to be an explanation from EY as well, given that they provided the advice which was included in this report to APRA, and some of the concerns which were raised by Dr. Henry at the time weren't included? It seems that this was not a full and complete report provided to the regulator.
Well, I mean, obviously, I wasn't part of these processes at the time. We weren't part of those processes. I mean, all those that were involved should explain, should explain themselves as part of restoring confidence. But I mean, the main point is the Royal Commission has completed its work, made 76 recommendations across the board. The government is taking action, the banks are taking action, and it's incumbent on everyone to do what they can to restore public confidence.
Labor wants the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Corporations and Financial Services to look into the big four accounting firms now in terms of their auditing practices. Would you support that?
Look, I mean, let's just consider this in an orderly fashion. I'm not going to make ad hoc statements in relation to these matters. We will consider these things through our proper processes, as we always do.
The report also includes a statement from then Chairman Ken Henry, that he was confident the bank was still selling products that would trigger compensation for customers in the future. This is months after the Royal Commission had begun and the revelations emerging. This is quite a startling report, isn't it?
Well, on the face of it, that is a concerning comment, but obviously there's an opportunity for Dr. Henry and the NAB to provide context around that if that is possible.
I guess at the heart of this is the relationship between the bank and the auditor too cosy?
Well, I mean, these are all matters that were obviously explored in the course of the Royal Commission. I mean, I think, what we need to look for today before jumping to any conclusions is the explanation in relation to these matters from those parties involved and, give them the opportunity to provide context if that is possible. But, in the first instance, I think this is now a matter for relevant parties to explain what precisely has happened and why.
OK, we look forward to those explanations from NAB and EY. Let's look at some other broader pictures now. Donald Trump is slapping a further 10% on $300 billion worth of Chinese goods as of September the 1st. The deal maker, he continues to push hard on this, doesn't he?
Well, look, this is a potentially concerning, escalation of a trade dispute between the world's two of the world's major economies. Obviously, from our point of view, and I mean, we don't believe it's in anybody's interest for trade tensions to continue to escalate, and we would much prefer if there was a resolution within the confines of our rules-based system. A rules-based system which we do accept is in need of urgent repair, and there are certainly issues that quite legitimately ought to be addressed to ensure that it's fit for purpose for the circumstances we're facing in 2019 and beyond. But nevertheless, we don't believe that it's in anybody's interest for trade tensions to continue to escalate with, obviously, the negative consequences that would have for global trading and global economic growth.
Donald Trump did say the negotiations will resume over coming weeks, but the prospects of a deal right now, they don't look too good.
Well, let's see how it plays out. I mean, certainly we would like to see a settled resolution, an agreed resolution, obviously in a sensible way forward that is in the global interest when it comes to facilitating continued strong global trading growth.
I guess underpinning this is a hope on the markets and elsewhere that there will be a deal done eventually because of Donald Trump's willingness and keenness to see the markets soaring, and they won't if this whole thing collapses, will they?
Well, as I've said and as we've said consistently, increasing global trade tensions with two of the major economies around the world involved in this sort of dispute is not good for anyone. It's not good for the global economy. It's not good for Australia. It's not good for the US or China, for that matter. So we believe it's in everybody's interest for these matters to be resolved, for there to be a pathway forward to reform our rules-based trading system to ensure that it better deals with, obviously, the position that emerging economies, large emerging economies are in today, and, their current economic structure and practices.
Finance Minister, is it fair to say the government's being pragmatic, though, in the sense of wanting to hedge your bets? Minister Birmingham is in China right now for the RCEP negotiations and obviously wanting to pursue that regional cooperation. So pushing ahead with trying to reduce trade barriers in that sense, in a regional sense, and with China particularly.
Well, this is not a matter of hedging bets. I mean, this is consistent with our long-standing position as an open trading economy, that we want to ensure that Australian exporting businesses have the best possible access to markets all around the world. I mean, that process that you referred to started back in 2012, and it's fundamentally a process involving ASEAN countries and those with whom ASEAN countries have free trade agreements. And it's another opportunity on top of all of the other opportunities that we've pursued as a government in recent times to protect our market access and to provide better market access for our exporting businesses so that we can sell as many Australian products and services around the world as possible.
So as Donald Trump has pulled out of the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal, and China's embracing this arrangement, is there a situation, ironically, where China could be filling that vacuum of leadership when it comes to free trade?
Well, again, this RCEP process is not a new process. It started back in 2012, and it's centred around ASEAN countries and the countries with whom ASEAN has got free trade agreements. From an Australian point of view, it's always been our approach to pursue ambitious free trade agreements with as many economies around the world as possible. During our period, we have indeed entered into free trade agreements with China, South Korea, Japan, Indonesia. We've been instrumental in landing the Trans-Pacific Partnership with 11 partners. We're pursuing this opportunity as well. We're focused on the European Union. We're hopeful, and of course we'll be pursuing a free trade agreement with the United Kingdom if and when Brexit is implemented. So, our approach from an Australian point of view has always been entirely consistent, and that is to promote open markets and free trade and to get the best possible access for our exporting businesses to markets all around the world.
The Fed in the US cut rates this week. Our dollar fell as a result. Any reflections on that? I think the RBA would be pleased with that in terms of its impact on our exporters.
Kieran, I'm not a commentator on monetary policy by our own Reserve Bank, let alone on the decisions of the Reserve Bank or the Federal Reserve in the United States. When obviously these central banks make their decisions independently based on their assessment of the economic data and information. From our point of view, obviously we'll continue to make the decisions we need to make to put Australia in the strongest possible, the most competitive possible position to ensure that our economy continues to grow and we can create more jobs.
Your colleagues, Senator Reynolds and Senator Payne, we're meeting with Secretary of State Pompeo and the new Defence Secretary this weekend amid reports the US, well, not reports, we've heard Secretary Pompeo confirm that they have requested of Australia support in terms of pressure on Iran in the Persian Gulf to free up the movement of trading ships and vessels. Is this something the government is keen to support?
Well, I mean, as the Defence Minister, Senator Reynolds, said yesterday, I mean, no decisions have been made. Obviously, these sorts of matters involve a lot of consultation with allies and, relevant stakeholders. And, as you say, there are meetings happening this weekend, involving the US and Australia and our foreign and defence ministers. And no doubt this is going to be one of the matters that will be discussed. But from an Australian point of view, no decision has been made.
Finally, on this individual that Labor wants to have his visa blocked, you were very critical of the language used by this person. Are you sympathetic to their concerns?
No, I'm not. I mean, I was absolutely critical of what he was quoted as saying, and I indeed find some of his comments objectionable and unacceptable. But I don't think that as a country committed to freedom of speech, that we want to put ourselves in a position where we ban everyone and anyone on the basis of objectionable and offensive speech. I mean, there are clear legal provisions in our Migration Act in which govern the circumstances in which somebody who is a non-citizen can be banned from entering Australia, and these laws, of course, ought to be applied. But just because somebody has controversial views should never be a sufficient reason to ban them from coming to Australia. I mean, my view is that if you want to be as effective as possible in defeating unacceptable views and bad opinions, you've got to engage in the debate. I mean, just engaging in debate with people that agree with you at all times doesn't actually help you defeat these sorts of bad, unacceptable opinions.
But sometimes the irony of that and engaging in this particular debate, that Labor's actually created more awareness of this Raheem Kassam than otherwise would have been known of the individual.
Look, Christina Keneally is desperate to, obviously put attention on herself, and she was quite happy, in the process to put the spotlight and, make this character, with objectionable past comments, more famous than he otherwise would have been. I mean, this is all about Christina Keneally wanting to get into the spotlight and using whatever means she has, at her fingertips.